Hi, it's Jen Richler, here with the final episode of our fall season. First, a word from our sponsor, Tivnu. Know a Jewish teen figuring out what's next? For students ages 17 to 21, the Tivnu Gap Year offers hands-on internships for social change, adventures in the stunning Pacific Northwest, and friendships that last a lifetime. Participants live in a vibrant and inclusive Jewish home in Portland, Oregon. It's a year of adventure, impact, and connection. Visit tivnu.org. Applications are open now, and robust financial aid is available. I also want to tell you about a new podcast I think you'll enjoy, called Thoughts and Prayers, from the Shalom Hartman Institute. It's hosted by Jessica Fisher, and it's a moving exploration of Jewish prayer and why it matters in modern life. Each episode weaves together personal stories, ancient texts, and conversations with thinkers and rabbis like Yossi Klein Halevi, Tamar Elad Applebaum, Lauren Holtzblatt, and Yehuda Kurtzer, wrestling with what it means to pray in our modern world. It's beautifully produced, deeply personal, and full of the kinds of questions that stay with you long after you've listened. If you're curious about spirituality, community, or what prayer means today, check out Thoughts and Prayers from the Shalom Hartman Institute, available wherever you get your podcasts. Now, on to the show. Welcome back to Can We Talk, the podcast of the Jewish Women's Archive, where gender, history, and Jewish culture meet.
Jewish jeans, their skin tight, their eyesight, Jewish jeans.
A young Gilda Radner swings her hips in form-fitting jeans. She sports dark feathered hair, oversized sunglasses, and a large gold Star of David necklace. The camera zooms in on her backside so we can see the word Jewess on her waistband and gold stars embroidered on her back pockets.
Jewish jeans. She shops the sales for designer clothes. She's got designer nails and a designer nose. She's an American princess.
This is Jewess Jeans, a parody ad from an episode of Saturday Night Live that aired in 1980. When the stereotype of the Jewish American princess was in its heyday. It stars Radner and was written by Marilyn Suzanne Miller, both Jewish women. SNL marked its 50th anniversary this year. Over the decades, Jewish women have shaped the show, both in the writer's room and on screen. But the Jewess Jeans ad was the first time the show focused on a Jewish female character.
She's an American princess and a disco queen. She's the Jewess in Jewess jeans. She's the Jewess in Jewess.
You don't have to be Jewish.
But it wouldn't hurt.
Jewish jeans.
In this episode of Can We Talk, we're looking at the evolving role of Jewish women on Saturday Night Live. We'll talk with Jennifer Kaplan, a scholar of Jewish American pop culture, about how Jewish women shaped the show both as cast members and as characters. And we'll dissect some iconic sketches, from Jewess Jeans to Coffee Talk to Jacob the Bar Mitzvah Boy. But first, we speak with a Jewish woman who was there when it all started. She talks about how her Jewish identity influenced some of the characters she played, and how changes on the show reflect changing attitudes about being Jewish.
I'm Lorraine Newman. I'm a founding member of the Groundlings and an original cast member of Saturday Night Live.
Lorraine grew up Jewish in Beverly Hills. SNL's creator, Lorne Michaels, invited her to be part of the original cast after seeing her improv group, the Groundlings, perform. In the 5 years that she was with the show, she played many beloved characters. Connie Conehead, the teenage daughter in the Conehead family, Sherry the Valley Girl, and Christy Christina, a ditzy assistant on a public access TV show. Most of her characters were not Jewish.
When you look back, do you think that there are ways that your Jewish identity affected your time on SNL?
Well, I think that it offered an affinity in terms of a certain type of humor. Like when Kirk Douglas hosted, we did, I think it was someone's bar mitzvah, and he was doing a toast, and he ad-libbed to Tante Vilde Heil, which is, ant wild animal, you know. And I think that stuff like that is so very Jewish.
Right.
I brought a character from the Groundlings who was this Jewish poetess, and we did this incredible sketch. It's one of my favorites of all time called Plato's Cave, you know, and I come out as a character renamed Isadora Schwartz, you know, and I come out and do this modern dance, spout poetry and everything. It was a really serious kind of beatnik, uh, you know, Sylvia Plath, but funny.
In the sketch, Lorraine appears on stage wearing all black, looking every bit the laid back beat poet until she opens her mouth.
I am a leaf, tossed in the wind. Oh, thou wind, blow, blow, blow me away!
The inspiration for Sherry the Valley Girl came from the surfers Lorraine met on the beach in Southern California. She was fascinated by their distinctive way of talking.
First of all, it has a vowel L. So instead of saying really, they'd say really. And the ing endings were off of the end of words like coming and going. And there was also like an interrogative lilt at the end of sentences like, so I was wearing that dress.
So Sherry is not Jewish.
No, she's
Yeah.
not, but her boyfriend Brad is. And I have this line where I say, you know, I brought a peach cobbler over to his parents' house, and I overheard his mom say, "Look, the shiksa made a Presbyterian pie." You know, so that was my little nod to that.
When people think about Jewish female characters on SNL, one that comes to mind, I think, is Linda Richman from Coffee Talk, played by Mike Myers. This was in the 90s after you'd left the show. What did you think of that character?
Linda Richman is Mike Myers, was his mother-in-law
Right.
from his first wife. I thought that was so wonderful and really funny and, you know, loving. It was a loving portrayal. There was no harm in it, which was, you know, could have been, but there wasn't. The older generation of Jewish men, I think, had actual contempt for Jewish women and did not find it attractive. I mean, that was the whole thing, you know. But I think that's completely different now.
It's interesting you're saying that there was a time Jewish men didn't find Jewish women attractive. I think, to me, that was part of what made the Jewish Jeans ad a departure, was that it made a Jewish woman look glamorous.
Right. Well, I don't think Lorne was one of those people that, you know, he was really, first of all, a champion of women's humor to begin with. So whatever was funny, it was just a meritocracy. You know, this was something Marilyn Miller wrote and totally just, you know, hilarious. And, you know, we did this song Goodbye Saccharin when it became outlawed. And again, it's like we're always on diets. It's just, it was great.
There's no sugar substitute for saccharin. Saccharin. Goodbye, saccharin. Why saccharin?
Is there anything else about Jewish women in the early days of SNL that comes to mind?
No, there's so little of it, you know.
Is that surprising in any way? I mean, there's been plenty of Jewish women on the show, written for the show.
It's surprising to me that there was less content back then. No, I don't think it's surprising. It wasn't a prohibitive thing. It was just, I guess it just didn't come up. People weren't really writing that much about it. And the stuff that they did, of course, was great. But it just, there were so many other things to cover, so many other things to do.
If it does come up more now, why do you think it may be
Well,
or see more of it now?
I think that there's a lot of pride now, whereas there wasn't, you know, when I was growing up at all. You know, it was that kind of Jewish self-loathing. And it's really an awful thing to behold, but that has changed so much. I think it's just more accepted and loved.
Lorraine Newman left SNL in 1980. She was part of the show's earliest chapter, but the story of Jewish women on the show was just beginning. Jennifer Kaplan helps us trace the story of how Jewish women continued to shape the show, sometimes as performers, sometimes through the characters they played. She's a professor and scholar of American religion and popular culture at the University of Cincinnati. We started by talking about the Jewish Jeans ad.
She's got a lifestyle uniquely hers. Europe, Nassau, wholesale furs.
There's part of me that absolutely loves this ad, and there's part of me that cringes at it. The presentation of Jewish women in this particular stereotype of the Jewish American princess is a woman who is not very interested in bettering herself intellectually, but still has the best education money can buy. She notoriously is constantly dieting. She notoriously does not cook for her family. The first verse is the verse that I think really embodies it the most. So it's like she's got a lifestyle uniquely hers. Europe, Nassau, wholesale furs. She's read every best-selling book. She's a gourmet blender cook. So that's like Japs are not stupid, but they're also not particularly interested in the life of the mind. And she's a gourmet blender cook because all she's probably eating are diet smoothies. The part of me that researches this stuff and writes about it and teaches courses on Jewish comedy, I love it because it's such a good little encapsulation of the way that some Jewish stereotypes get played out and presentation of Jews in media, all of those things. At the same time, there's a part of me that dies a little bit inside every time I watch it. The tagline at the end is an announcer coming over and saying, Jewish jeans guaranteed to ride up. So we have this ad that could be read as kind of self-deprecating, she's poking fun at herself, she's poking fun at the stereotype, whatever. But it ends with this kind of, it's a man, and so much of the nastiness of the Jap stereotype is it's really gendered, and it's really about the way that men talked about Jewish women and depicted Jewish women.
Can you talk about the sketch from around the same time where Gilda Radner and Bill Murray light Hanukkah candles?
Yeah, I think the framing of it is that Bill Murray and Gilda Radner are married, and his boss and their wife are coming over for dinner. And it happens to be during Hanukkah, so they light the menorah. And I think Gilda Radner starts to cry a little bit when she's doing the blessing over the candles.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav.
I think it was a legitimate moment of emotion for her, that it was meaningful to be on live national television saying a prayer in Hebrew and performing a Jewish ritual. That is not a thing that happens much on TV.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to the 90s, and I want to talk about Linda Richman. Do you want to say a little bit about her and just sort of the general idea of these coffee talk sketches?
Sure. And I think it's worth calling out or articulating that we're jumping ahead to the 90s in part because there wasn't a lot in between. There was a real empty period for Jewish women in particular on SNL. I mean, SNL, you can make all the arguments about how they haven't done great at casting women in general. They've done an even worse job at casting women of color. But between Gilda Radner and honestly getting into the 21st century, there was a very small number of Jewish women on the show. So, here we are jumping into the 90s, but that's because we have a non-Jewish man playing a Jewish woman, because they didn't have very many Jewish women on the show to do it themselves. So the Linda Richman character, that's another one where I think about the way that, 13, 14-year-old Jenny felt about those sketches and the way that present day Jenny feels about those sketches. It was a representation of a culture, even though I'm not from New York. And so my culture, my Jewish culture has never been New York Jewish culture. But it was nonetheless something that I like recognized as being a joke that was for me in a way. And so there was something Hamish about that, and there was something that spoke to me about that.
On this show, we talk about coffee, New York, daughters, dogs, no big whoop, just coffee talk. Okay, it's Mother's Day, and my daughter Robin did not show up. She's getting married, and this year she's visiting his mother. Now I'm getting a little verklempt. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. The radical reconstruction of the South after the Civil War was neither radical nor a reconstruction. Discuss.
And then how does adult Jenny feel about Linda Richman and Coffee Talk? And I guess, yeah, just can you describe her a little more, like the way that she presents and what she looks like?
She's got oversized sunglasses, teased up hair. She also wears this kind of electric blue sweater situation with shoulder pads. She has, these long manicured nails, and she's got the accent.
As you know, Paul Baldwin is the usual host who had developed Spilkus in his Genectigazoink. He recovered, was doing fine, schmeck as can be, when P.S., long story short, the Spilkus came back. And Geg is into hay, he's back to square one, go figure.
So, he is none of the things that he is embodying. He's not from New York. He's not Jewish. He's not a woman. So it is very caricature.
Does it matter to you, or is it relevant to you that he based the character on his mother-in-law, his Jewish mother-in-law, who actually was named Linda Richman? Does that make a difference, in terms of how it comes across?
I try not to put myself in a position to be the arbiter of is it okay? Is it not okay? I feel like that's something that each person has to kind of figure for themselves how they feel about that on an affective level. It always was, I think, meant to be something that felt sweet in a way, that felt loving in a way. I don't know that respectful is the word that I want to use, because that's just not SNL's lane. But yeah, I don't think it ever meant to feel mean, but it did nevertheless frequently traffic in the darker portions of the stereotypes of Jewish mothers, about them being overly concerned about their children, sometimes to the point of what one could argue is, abusive language and interference, and the way that they talk about and to their kids. There's a dark side to that stereotype that even when it's being presented in a way that is mostly loving and funny, it's nevertheless still kind of holding up something that has been difficult for a lot of real life Jewish women to navigate.
So now I'm going to move to a bit more recently, a character who is actually a Jewish male character played by a Jewish woman, which is interesting. And that is Jacob the Bar Mitzvah boy, played by Vanessa Bayer. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of the premise of that character and what that character is like?
Yeah, I love that character. And I think usually when he's introduced, he's Michael Che's, is it his podiatrist son?
Here to explain some Hanukkah traditions is my new podiatrist son and recent bar mitzvah boy, Jacob.
Right, and then I think Jacob usually says something like, my father says you should use this for your bunions.
Hey, Michael, my dad said to give you this ointment as a token of appreciation for your business.
I love it, and I can't even fully articulate why. It is so goofy. The way that, a full-grown woman comes out pretending to be this 13-year-old boy who has just celebrated his bar mitzvah, and he is so scripted, right? So what he's playing on is this idea that particularly at someone's bar mitzvah, they are so nervous that they have scripted everything they are going to need to say and God forbid something go off script, because they are just going to keep answering the things that they have written down in the order in which they have them written down.
Jacob, you seem a little nervous. You don't have to do a rehearsed speech like at your bar mitzvah. We can just talk like buddies. Yeah.
Each night of Hanukkah, we light a candle and say a prayer. The prayer for the bread, the prayer for the wine.
It's interesting you pointed out how in Linda Richmond you have a man playing a woman, and here you have a Jewish woman playing a 13-year-old Jewish boy. What do you think about that? Or is there anything interesting about that?
I mean, there is. I think it's saved by the fact that Jacob is supposed to be so young, because in the same way that a lot of the Linda Richmond stuff echo long-standing, really damaging stereotypes about Jewish women, of course, some of the longest standing, and we're talking going back to the Middle Ages, were things like that they menstruate and that they're effeminate and that there's something unmale and unmasculine about Jewish men. So potentially, like, there is something that could be worrying there. I think, though, the fact that they kept the character as such a youngish child saves it from going too far in that direction.
Okay, so we'll move on from Jacob the Bar Mitzvah Boy to one more, which is, I guess, probably the most recent, which is Sarah Sherman. I asked you specifically to watch this clip of her on Weekend Update.
So as with much Weekend Update stuff, she is ostensibly being there as herself. But she is playing herself, I think, in a mode of what Letty Cotton Pogrebin coined the term the Jewish big mouth. And I think that's very much what we have going on in this sketch, is that she is just yelling at Colin Jost about things.
And another thing, why is this show on so late? It's not even Saturday anymore, it's Sunday. You people are being lied to.
And at the end, the thing that she is yelling at him about is, why are there no Jews on the show?
And another thing, why aren't there any Jews on the show?
There are a lot of Jewish people on the show, including you.
Wow, okay, I'm gonna do it.
Don't do it.
I'm gonna. In other news, local wet blanket Colin Jost is keeping track of the amount of Jews at SNL. He's making a list and he's checking it twice.
Her response is to accuse him of basically tracking all of the Jewish members of SNL. But she's right that historically, this is sort of hard to quantify. Jews, of course, have never been a large percentage of the American population. But if you consider the fact that Steve Allen in the 1980s, in his book Funny People, wrote that 80% of the comedy writers in the second half of the 20th century were Jewish, then SNL has never come anywhere near that sort of Jewish representation. So it's like, what do we want to call effective Jewish representation on SNL?
And another thing, why do you guys dress like that? I mean, nice jacket, Colin. Where'd you get that? The friggin' store?
Yeah, I got it at a store, yeah.
She got you, man. You suck. Take the meeting.
Aw, thanks, Michael. Noted white feminist Michael Che protects innocent Jewish girl from gorgeous fascist Colin Jost.
Sarah Sherman, everyone.
What do you think overall of the way Jewish women have been portrayed on SNL over the years, and how do you think the portrayals have changed?
I would be very hard-pressed to say that the portrayal of Jewish women on SNL has been any better or worse than the portrayal of any specific demographic on SNL. It has just never been SNL's goal to portray anyone like well or accurately or anything like that. The sketches have always been broad. They've always been a particular type of comedy that is skirting just at the edge of acceptability. Their portrayals of queer characters over the years have not been great, and their portrayals of characters of color over the years have not been great.
In their 50th anniversary special that aired earlier this year, SNL acknowledged some of their more cringeworthy moments with an in memoriam montage of characters that played into racist, sexist, and homophobic stereotypes. A joke about Asians eating dogs, a gay Hitler sketch, and the run and throw like a girl Olympics. But later in the special, Mike Myers reprised his role as Linda Richman. He had the same teased-up hair and electric blue sweater from the Coffee Talk days, but this time he appeared as a guest on Bronx Beat, a talk show hosted by Maya Rudolph and Amy Poehler.
So, Linda, how are you doing?
Well, it's been a tough year so far.
No. Linda, what's wrong?
I have a hematoma pneumonia infractum. Long story short, my Zorch is on fire. I had to have it moved up 4 inches, where my belly button used to be. I can't wear belts.
Wait. Your what? Your Zorch?
My Zorch.
Your what? Your Zorch?
My Zorch.
I think she means her downtown area.
Oh, all right.
It really just hit me the wrong way during the 50th anniversary special that Mike Myers' triumphant return as Linda Richman followed on the heels of this montage that they did. None of the things that they were apologizing for or resting in peace were any of their stereotyped Jewish characters, and then out comes Mike Myers. So it felt very much like one of those stark moments where Jews don't count. SNL's kind of tongue-in-cheek in their SNL way, being like, yeah, we screwed up. A lot of this stuff was really offensive. Sorry about that. But here's a guy in drag pretending to be a Jewish woman. We can all still laugh at that, right? And I was like, can we? Should we? I don't know.
What do you think the portrayals of Jewish women on SNL tell us about the place of Jewish women in American life?
What I think has been a trend that you can look at and chart is the way that SNL has shown us the evolution of the place of women in comedy, not just Jewish women in comedy, but Jewish women in comedy as well. And the way that, if we compare the kind of sketches and characters that Gilda Radner and Lorraine Newman and Jane Curtin had in the early seasons. And I mean, think about, Jane Curtin obviously is not Jewish of those first generation 3 women on the show, but Jane Curtin was a regular on Weekend Update, and Dan Aykroyd's usual, throwaway line to her was, Jane, you ignorant slut.
Yeah.
Right? So that's not great. But that's how women, that was the life for women in comedy in the 70s, was make fun of yourself before the men can do it. Belushi notoriously did not find women funny, and he didn't want to be in sketches with the women on the show because he didn't think women were funny. So it was a hard road for those early women in comedy. And I think as you watch just the evolution of the complexity of characters that the women are allowed to play, the way the women are writing their own sketches and writing characters for themselves, I think we have really been able to see the way that comedy has opened up for women a lot across the last 50 years. In terms of being able to extrapolate to the place of Jewish women in society, I think just the place of Jews in America has become normalized differently. I like to point to Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song as being a watershed moment, that there's a generation of Jews, my generation of Jews, who that was their thing. That was the moment that said to them, not only is being Jewish okay, but it's actually cool, and all of these people are Jewish, and go let your Jewish freak flag fly and lean into it in a way that you hadn't necessarily been encouraged to lean in.
Put on your yarmulke, here comes Hanukkah. So much funaka to celebrate Hanukkah. Hanukkah is the festival of lights. Instead of 1 day of presents, we have 8 crazy nights. But when you feel like the only kid in town without a Christmas tree, here's a list of people who are Jewish, just like you and me. David Lee Roth lights the menorah. So do Kirk Douglas, James Caan, and the late Dinah Shore. Guess who eats together at the Carnegie Deli? Bowser from Shanana and Arthur Fonzarelli. Paul Newman's half Jewish and Goldie Hawn's half too. Put them together, what a fine-looking Jew.
Adam Sandler in his very first performance of the Hanukkah song on SNL in 1994. A special Happy Hanukkah to all the Jewish women who have written and starred on SNL, including Marilyn Suzanne Miller, Rosie Schuster, Lorraine Newman, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Sarah Silverman, Rachel Dratch, Maya Rudolph, Vanessa Bayer, Chloe Feynman, and Sarah Sherman. Thank you for listening to Can We Talk, the podcast of the Jewish Women's Archive. Our team includes Nahani Rouse and Judith Rosenbaum. Our theme music is by Girls in Trouble. If you love listening to Can We Talk and want to make sure we continue telling stories at the intersection of gender, history, and Jewish culture, please remember the Jewish Women's Archive when you make your year-end donations. For the month of December, donations will be matched up to $50,000. To contribute, go to jwa.org/donate2025. And thanks. That's a wrap on our fall season. We'll be back with more in the spring. In the meantime, you can catch up on episodes you've missed at jwa.org/canwetalk or on your favorite podcast app. And you can sign up for our monthly newsletter at jwa.org/signup. I'm Jen Richler, wishing all who celebrate a joyful Hanukkah.
So drink your gin and tonica, but don't smoke marijuana. If you really, really wanna, have a happy, 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 happy Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah, everybody. Thank you.